my name is Antoinette Brown. I just want to apologize for my background. Someone hit my Wi-Fi box and I'm out of Wi-Fi for a few days. So I just came to the library. Let's get into my presentation. I chose the idea exceptionality I chose was autism. Um, Introduction to autism. I'd like to say autism or autism spectrum disorder is a complex neurodevelopmental condition that affects communication, behavior, and social interactions. I think understanding autism really the more important part, the spectrum part, because of the fact that not only does it impact the individual, but it looks so different for everyone that it may not work for everyone. So what you may do for one person may not work for the other. But I also think it's important for the families, friends, educational systems, and society as a whole to look at it because there it I would say autism is so unique because it's not the same traits or anything. It is literally based off of the person, which kind of goes into my next point definition of autism. Like the word autism literally means within oneself, meaning that the traits that they have is so unique to them that it reflects of who they are, which is why I said it's a spectrum, not so much not one of a kind all looks alike. Um in the Discovering Behavioral Neuroscience in Introduction to Biological Psychology, I learned that they define autism as is one of a several neurodevelopmental disorders in which the onset of symptoms occurs during early childhood. So they kind of refer it more into the psychology side, and they refer to the DSM-5 book that autism is characterized by deficits in two behavioral domains: social communication and interaction, also with restricted repetitive patterns and behavior interests or activities. So, as I said before, autism is a new thing. Well, not a new thing, but it's becoming more popular because of the increased rise of autism. I would also say, with the autism, it can occur with anyone, racial, ethnic, and all socioeconomic groups. Like anyone, like can have autism. Like it doesn't, not anyone, but anyone can get autism pretty much. Um, my last point that I really want to kind of highlight is children presenting with a history of early maltreatment who shows autistic traits of behavior have a high risk of meeting diagnostic criteria for ASD. I think that was an interesting find because there is a lot of cases that are coming up that it's new and it's becoming more known. But I think this last one kind of points into it that some of the diagnosis could be maltreatment or neglect. It could be just a mixed diagnosed. But I'm not saying one shoe fits for all, but I do think it's a good point to put that out there that neglect and maltreatment can mimic autism traits. And I think misdiagnosis can occur with autism as well. So let's get into the prevalence of it. Um, Children, 1 in 31 have like autism. It's 200% raising because so many new cases over the past 2 decades are becoming profounded with autism. Boys are more diagnosed than girls, and their ratio is like 4 to 1 with autism. But I've also learned that girls get diagnosed later in life due to the fact that the symptoms are just a little different. 2%, 2.2% of like in the world have autism in adults. So that's like 1 in 45 adults who gets autism. 50% of children diagnosed with autism have co-occurring intellectual disabilities. So I would say like not for everyone, but at least half of them may have more than one disability besides just autism. So that's that right there. Let's get into the etiology of autism. Learning that there are these three ways that they're like not coming up with autism, but how is kind of autism kind of caused a bit. For one, there's the genetic predisposition influence, meaning that genes pretty much that like it's genetics that autism can be passed down heritable by family. Autism has a polygenic basis. Many genes contribute. So they're not saying like one specific gene. There's multiple genes that are included in this process that can contribute to autism. Genetic variations within in the gene part can increase the risk of ASD. I also want to put that a lot of these studies came out because there's a study with twins that kind of brought it out, which why you see my two little twins down there. Um, they're newer studies are also showing that environmental factors can impact autism too, but they're pretty much explaining that if children in the neonatal time were exposed to like traffic related air pollution has been linked to autism. They're also finding out environmental factors and chemicals may influence autism risk as well. And it's interesting because I had a behavioral neuroscience class, and this is where I learned this information from. That this one's kind of explaining that it's a nervous system too, affecting brain development. This is kind of going more into the oxidative stress, and it's explaining that inflammation may affect prenatal brain development. So they're kind of saying like they don't know what type of stress or things that can be changing the neurons that's happening in our brains while pregnant. But they're learning and they're finding it. For like my last point, and unusually this is kind of saying like the neurons in our brain and synapses may can contribute to developmental disorders and increase neurotrophin levels along with immature synapses have been linked to autism spectrum disorder. So they're saying while we're in your neonatal phase that if your brain is making too much neurons because at this stage neurons die and synapses die, but if too many of them are surviving in our brains and they're not dying, and it's okay if they die because they're supposed to die, but since they're not dying off, it's increasing the neurotrophin along with these immature synapses that are still there, and it's been linked to autism as well. um Characteristics of autism. I am heavy on the autism is a spectrum. Woo, woo, sorry. However, autism is a spectrum. So there is much more characteristics of autism that is out there within these five categories. But the five that you see are the main ones that people have that like not that they have that they're dealing with, based off the fact of social communication and interaction, restricted and repetitive behavior, sensory differences, communication differences, cognitive and behavioral characteristics. Take the time to read over some, but there's way more that is that, but also for each person with autism it doesn't look the same. So one person may have social communication but another person may not have that. um Educational needs of individuals with autism. So we're going to be addressing some things that can help individuals with autism. For one, assessment and planning. Always having specific educational needs and develop tailors like IEPs is such a great way to help students with autism because it's creating a catered plan to them, specific to that student. While also you can another way to help is implementation of strategies that is for the students by recognizing their strengths and their learning styles to help them learn better. Creation of supportive learning environments that promote social interaction, communication, and sensory regulation, because some of them may be looking for a sensory input or no sensory input. Ongoing monitoring adjustment. What I've learned is that autism over time, some things can go, not some things, but like certain things can go away through learned. Like, for example, like let's say someone's having a behavior like with hitting or something, that can go away and another behavior can come up. So I think adjustment is the important part because with students, it's based off of the student and it can change. And I think keeping that is pretty true. Um, Interventions for autism. Since it is a spectrum, there's different methods, but I'd like to start with family and education. With education, IEPs, structured instruction, visual schedules, inclusive classrooms will help. There's also for family, they're including the family with parent training, counseling, community resources, and transitional planning because they're also learning that when the family is um educated with the disability, they can grow and do more as a whole and not feel like they're struggling or whatever not whatever the case is, but whatever can be happening. Behavioral therapy, the most famous one that is currently out is ABA, applied behavior analysis, focus on increasing positive behaviors and decreasing challenging behaviors through reinforcement strategies. They also have positive behavior supports and positive reinforcements. They have speech and language therapy. Target supports improve communication skills, including expressive and receptive language. Some examples they have is like an AAC device or PECs. But I would also want to do with language therapy and speech that everyone just thinks it's like people are talking with the talker. It's also the fact that learning to communicate with other individuals. So heavy on the social part too. Other therapies that they have: occupational, physical, social skills training, cognitive therapy. The list can go on because remember that 50% of those who are diagnosed do have an occurring disability with them. So some of those disabilities, they need more types of therapies that can go on with it. My conclusion and summary is that, autism is a spectrum and that while we learn about it, we continue to have empathy for it and continue to learn about it. And also, I think my key takeaway was the fact that, neglect and maltreatment like kind of can mimic autism traits. And these are my references and peer reviewed sources. And that's it. That's my presentation. Thank you for watching.